I know Destiny is persona non grata in Twitch and YouTube politics, but he has this thing that he says in a healthy chunk of interviews that I've watched, where he says, "Listen, in the past 10 years, 12 years of Trump being a relevant political figure, can you find me a single clip of him talking intelligently about geopolitics or economics or world policy or anything like that? I invite anyone to send me that clip and I will review it and I will apologize." And to my knowledge, no one has found that clip and submitted it to him. Good to see you. How you living?
It has been a while. How long? I was trying to talk about this before I called. How long has it been?
I think that the last time that we spoke in person was Cincinnati.
It must be Ohio. I thought it was Ohio.
Yeah, and then as far as like on stream or whatever, I'm sure I've retweeted you a bunch of times, might have jumped into your replies a couple of times. But that's probably it, just like reply guys on Twitter, which is funny. So that means it's probably been like a year and maybe, yeah, somewhere around a year probably, which is crazy.
Maybe. I mean, we talked during hippy dippy times for sure. We had calls and stuff. I remember calling you. I got back from the BMP invent. I was covered from head to toe in soot, and I was keeping people awake with chatting with you back and forth about trying to organize hippy dippy. So we had a few calls, but we haven't really had a sit down long conversation in a bit. How have you been, man?
Good. I've been darn good. So just to share a little bit of what's going on with me, Warhammer has been very good to me. I actually remember, I think about this all the time. I was on a hippy dippy probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was like April of 2022. And I was like, I guess I'm a Warhammer YouTuber now. And you're kind of like, what the hell? But that was the beginning. And so I kept pushing Warhammer content. It was fairly popular. I got my silver play button. I broke 100K subs on the Warhammer content, which has been awesome. I literally just got it within the past few months. And then obviously I worked with PV during the election cycle. Considering how insane the Trump administration has been in the past 80 days, I have no regrets about what I did during the election cycle, and will happily do it again for the midterms. And
you got a lot of shit for that. I've seen so many conversations where you talk to people where you guys are going to agree on maybe some social issues. You're going to agree about personal responsibility. And then all of a sudden, the fact that you're just not with Trump, you're no longer conservative.
You're a closet Democrat. And then meanwhile, the people that the Republicans are embracing are like Andrew Tate, Benny Johnson, the Hodge twins. And these people could not articulate a single conservative philosophical concept. They couldn't tell you how to balance.
Are you telling me that man whores and pimps are not the leaders of God's party?
Apparently they are. I'm on the outs. You shouldn't be talking to me about a Republican is. You need to ask Andrew Tate what a Republican is, because apparently he has broader power within the Republican Party as far as relevancy than I do.
Look, apparently the policy is we need to deport the Venezuelan political dissident hairdressers and import the Romanian sex criminals so they can beat their women on our shores.
You know what's good about that though? Not obviously none of it is good. But what's good about it from a political rhetorical perspective is that I have not muted or blocked Rob Noor. Rob Noor is still active on my newsfeed. I have not seen him piping up at all. And I think it's because he knows that he can't defend deporting gay asylees with credible threats against their life.
Based upon like soccer tattoos.
Right. It's worse. There was like an early 20-year-old with an autism awareness tattoo. There was another 20-year-old, and these guys were straight guys, and one of them had a soccer tattoo. Then there was the gay hairdresser who also got deported. And Charlie Kirk, I was just watching this today. I am
across the country. Bring everyone you can. Thank you. Democracy will prevail.
Thank you very much. April 19th, hands off protest. Thank you very much for the tenor. Sorry, people give me money and I have to close people down because I need money.
No, interrupt me anytime you get a dono sound. I'm happy to do my part, basically.
And I'm happy to interrupt you.
But there was this guy, I forget his name. Tren de Agua is the
group
gang.
If his name was that, then I would I would forgive their
Yeah, then I'd be like,
confusion.
okay, this guy's probably affiliated. His name's Trenda Agua, so probably affiliated.
Mr. MS-13,
No, there was this guy.
we've agreed to your asylum case. You can stay in the United States.
It's not that bad. It's Aguilar, something like that. But there was a guy who was deported. He has 3 kids. He's from Maryland. If you Google him, you can find his name.
Yep.
And Charlie Kirk had some Will Chamberlain, who I have no idea who that guy is. I just see him tweeting the dumbest stuff all the time. And he had Will Chamberlain on in order to confirm that this guy was actually an MS-13 member. And so Charlie Kirk's position was, oh, well, it turns out that it was an administrative error that was preventing him from going back to El Salvador. And he was saying that the 18th Street gang was going to kill him. But realistically, El Salvador is a safe country now. So his reason for asylum isn't even real. And on top of that, he's an MS-13 gang member. So it doesn't matter anyway.
What's funny is because they're going to send
segment.
him. It's like, oh, El Salvador is safe now. Let's send him to the place where all the most violent criminals would want to kill him are.
You beat me to the punch. That's exactly what happened. So the reason why he was quote unquote credibly accused of being an MS-13 gang member was because he was caught not panhandling, that's the wrong term, but he was caught looking for day job work at a Home Depot, and he was wearing a black Chicago Bulls hat. And apparently the Chicago Bulls is like one of the, I don't know, like dog whistles for this gang. But excuse me, I'm trying to use logic and it's only working out half of the time. If he was an active gang member, why is he looking for day labor at Home Depot? Why doesn't he have more tattoos? And he's been here since 2011. Why doesn't he have a domestic criminal record if he's this hardcore MS-13 gang banger?
Look,
what the hell is going on?
I'm a tradesman by craft.
All right, dogs want to go out, but I'm listening.
Tradesman by craft, gang member by passion. By passion.
Well, and that's... But dude, I'm trying to figure it out because obviously, like, there's things that I agree with for social conservatism. It's like you shouldn't be a drug addict. You should take care of your family. You should pay your bills. You should pay your taxes. You shouldn't be a degenerate, right?
Take homosexuals, big pit, get rid of them, move them over here. Wait, what? Sorry, I was just saying all the things you told me before we went live.
Sure, ignoring the pit and the homosexuals, okay?
Yeah.
Then with fiscal conservatism, it's like the government shouldn't spend so much money that it collapses and destroys all of civilization. Okay, I agree with that in principle. But the fact that the most popular people on the right wing are trying to gaslight me about what they are claiming is real off of scant evidence, and they're propagandizing their audiences to believe these things is actually repulsive to me on a degree that I can barely articulate. It's infuriating.
I've noticed, like, Rob is not going to put himself on the chopping block for Trump's dumbest moves when he can see it's going to blow up. There's no reason for him to do it. I see him and I hear him sometimes like, there's no reason for me to try to defend this, right? And so I know that there are some things where he gets on the defense, and this is all people. He's like, I don't really agree with this 100%, but I'll go there and argue for it because there's maybe some points. But on some of this, when it comes to the illegal deportations, when it comes to the ignoring of the courts, when it comes to the deportation of these, when he's supposed to be a free speech absolutist, and now we're deporting all these people. And I know you've had a feud with Pisco about this over their language around Israel or foreign topics or critique of foreign policy.
Mahmoud Khalil. Yeah, it's only the one guy. Literally everything else, I probably agree with Pisco on. There was the Turkish person who wrote an op-ed that wasn't endorsing terrorist organizations, and she got subject to deportation too. I disagree with that, obviously, and so yeah, it's literally just this one guy. And the only reason why I'm kind of making a fuss about it is because I do feel that way genuinely. I felt that way 5 years ago, so I'm going to say it now. But you'll never find me sweeping for all this extra BS where they're ignoring due process, they're inflicting cruel and unusual punishments, they're ignoring the courts, they're invoking wartime laws that barely apply.
Did you hear? I'm sorry to say this, but did you hear that one Ukrainian Republican? I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but she's the Ukrainian-born Republican member of Congress that goes out there to say we can sell out my country. It's all good. It's all fine. Victoria Sparks is her name. I don't know if you heard her name
Yeah.
before, but she
I'm
went out there in
unfamiliar, but I'm not
defense of
surprised.
these deportations, saying if you commit a crime, then you're not due process. She
You're
said
not
this
entitled
at
to
a
due
town
process,
hall,
and due
speaking
process
to
is
her
the
own
way that you're
residents.
supposed to determine whether or not you committed a crime, you moron. Dude, this cult has so we started the conversation this way, but I want to hit the point again. You have to understand that for a year, I've been never Trump since 2015,
At
but
the very start,
in
there's
2000,
never a moment where you were like, I mean, that was there never a moment where you were like,
yeah,
Trump, oh,
there,
you've tickled my pickle here.
Okay, yeah, there were two times that he tickled my pickle. Okay, number one was in 2018 when I was driving home from a stable job with a stable paycheck, and the economy was doing really well for like 60 seconds, and I was like, oh, maybe he's not such a moron. Maybe he was playing 4D chess. Maybe the economy is good because he did all this deregulation crap. I have no idea. And then of course COVID happens, and then the economy implodes, and I'm like, oh no, actually he is a dumbass. And then so that was one time he tickled my pickle. And then the second one was actually in reference to the Mahmoud Khalil thing, where effectively the State Department and Trump was like, hey, listen, if you're an enemy of America, if you talk smack about America, if you hate this country, if you hate republicanism, if you hate rule of law, if you hate liberal democracy, then we don't need you in our country and you can buzz off. And I'm like, you know what? I could deal with that.
Is that what he said?
Times.
Is that Trump was like, if you don't love liberal democracy, if you don't love principles of rule of law, come on.
As I was saying it, I was like, I added all of that.
Yeah, you imagine, because this is the thing, right? And
I did imagine it.
I can understand like this one finding a certain, and I don't know the specifics of Khalil's case specifically, but if he was like Hamas or like team number one, if I could find something like
vaguely pro-Hamas organization.
Wait, that's it? He worked with them?
Yeah. So
okay.
he was a part of
I thought you were gonna like reference me like
background.
His tweet where he was like 9/11 more like party time. I thought I was gonna get something like Hassan
that's
can
why
live here. He can be here as long as he wants. Have the most popular show on Twitch and say we deserve 9/11. This kid can't even reside in the country if he. So I don't know how I feel about this.
Oh, if I could, but here's the thing: if I could deport Hassan and deport Frogan, I would as well. But also stripping people of citizenship sets a bad precedent, right? So because what'll happen is I would strip Hassan's citizenship. I would strip Frogan's citizenship. I would send them back to Turkey and Lebanon.
Is Frogan?
But when a Democrat gets in power, I would be stripped of citizenship and I would be deported to Russia. So
Frogan was born in Lebanon.
Her extended family's from Lebanon. I think
we're gonna just deport
Lebanese.
her. We're gonna deport. She was born here.
Yeah.
Like that's evil, man.
Listen, this is why it's a bad idea.
That's so
I'm not
evil.
saying it's a good idea. I'm saying I would do it. I have bad ideas. Okay.
I know. I'm well aware. I've known you for good. I've known you for well enough.
So hold on. So of course it would be a bad idea because they would Uno reverse card it on me, and then I would be deported shortly thereafter and stripped of my citizenship for supporting whatever extremist group, right?
That's the thing that scares me is the advocacy against U.S. foreign policy. It's that specific carve out that I don't like, because that changes radically from administration to administration right now. If you look at the gulf in difference between Democrats and Trump's MAGA party, when it comes to, for example, Euro-Atlanticism. If, for example, I'm out here and I'm saying we need to send more aid to Ukraine, everybody, we need to get what we can to send it over. And Trump's position is we need to add as much pressure on the Ukrainians as possible. You know, we need to sanction them. We need to pressure them this way, pressure them that way. Is there going to get a point where just if I was foreign born, I could be targeted for my location in the country, either for critiquing Trump around foreign policy? I mean, we've seen French scientists deported at the border when they were trying to come to conferences in the United States and such.
Yeah, can I tell you the law as I understand it, and actually this will go on to the Mahmoud Khalil point really well. So my understanding is that there's a legal subsection called deportable aliens, and if you click on it, the one specifically for Mahmoud Khalil that I would apply is like subsection 7 of the terrorism provision. And if you click on it, it says that if you ever like endorse or espouse or encourage others to endorse or espouse terrorist activities, or if you ever endorse a terrorist organization, then you're subject to deportation. And
did he do any of that? But so he worked with an organization that could have. Well, that's
well, let me articulate it.
Okay.
So he worked with an organization called CUAD. It was a student coalition of a bunch of people who were pro-Palestinian. But CUAD, he negotiated on their behalf in order for like that they had already occupied buildings. He was trying to negotiate the conditions on which they would relinquish those buildings as a leader of the student organization. And then they released a newsletter a year after October 7th, where they were like glorifying the martyrs of the Al Aqsa flood. And they were talking about how they had learned what lessons of guerrilla warfare in Brazil and this kind of shit. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to be rubbing elbows with these MFers, then you can buzz off.
He
That's
released
my
that
general
press report, or did the organization release that press report?
The organization did.
So is he
It's
the
close
one
enough
being
for me.
deported
I don't care.
because he's just the one that can be?
Yeah. Yep. I don't care.
If it,
You got me in a grumpy mood. I don't care if he gets deported. I really don't. I would prefer it that he does.
the reason this stuff, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like, let's say that
You just don't want a slippery slope. I get
I
it.
don't like a slippery slope, but let's say that I gave you that he was the one who wrote it up. It wasn't somebody else, that he believed in it 100%, that the barrier
Gone.
between him and an organization, none of that thing mattered. And we ended up deporting this guy, right? Or let's even like change the scenario a bit, right? Like, I remember when I had a discussion with Rob Noor, right, and about Gonzalo Lira, and they were like, Dylan, don't you care about like Gonzalo? No. Like, what, are you kidding me? You're gonna
Yeah,
get
me
me to
either.
care about this dude who could have very well just smoked himself to death instead of been tortured in this Ukrainian prison system, as many people allege. Like, I don't care about him because of the things he said and the horrible stuff he did. But there has to be a standard that if there was wrong things done to him or abuses done to him, we cannot allow that, because that could easily be tools that are used against, say, future Ukrainian political figures doing it against dissidents. It's not like Ukrainian government officials assassinating journalists or stuff like that. Like, that's anything that's foreign to the Ukrainian public. And so while I don't really care about Gonzalo Lira as an individual, it probably would have been better if he was just kicked out of the country instead of what ended up happening, even though they told him to leave multiple times. But if I was to accept this with this current government in power, which is trying to find ways to deport American citizens to foreign prisons, ignoring the courts, obviously purposefully, if you're not a naive fool, I just I don't want to give him an inch.
Sure, and that's where I think that while Pisco obviously wants to get upset and find something to chud dunk on and all that kind of stuff, immediately as soon as we move against Mahmoud Khalil, we're probably in lockstep. There was a Turkish person who wrote an op-ed about and criticized Palestine and the United States, and they were on a student visa as well. They were deported. I don't agree with that. There's obviously all these innocent people who are getting deported to CCOT. I think that it's undeniably evil. I define evil as not only doing bad, because of course we all do bad, and what we believe to the service is the service of good, but these are people who are doing bad things and they know it's bad and they don't care. And so I think that the Trump administration is actually like evil. They know that they're doing bad things and they don't care, and they're hurting innocent people and they're getting people killed. So
100%.
I can keep yapping if you're responding to chat or
No,
something.
no, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I know we haven't talked in forever. There's a bunch of stuff we could catch up on, both personally and with stuff in the news. If you have anything you wanted to ask, you can always just throw it out there, because I could just throw all the different news topics at you.
Sure. Let me share with the audience my new thing. All right. So I worked with PV obviously during the election, took a healthy chunk of flack because they were too progressive, I guess, and Rob Noor and a bunch of other people effectively chastised me because they were working for progressives down ballot. But I didn't care, because honestly, beating Trump was a bigger issue to me. And now that we're here, it's like, yeah, obviously, like, this guy's the biggest piece of garbage that's ever held the office, as far as I'm concerned. And then what happened was within the past month or two, I think it
You
was
know how
within the
bad
past.
I sorry. Do you know how weird it is to just sit here and be like, because I remember on election night on my stream, I was quiet as a church mouse. Well, Admiral Gibbs
Yeah.
and everybody else was on stream talking about, Dylan, don't worry, this is gonna be fine. They're not gonna choose Tulsi. They're not gonna do that. They're not gonna do this. They're not gonna do that. And just sitting there,
They did all of them.
every single, like, it's not even like, oh, this is some of the bad things. Every worst case scenario that I felt in my chest, choosing of Tulsi, the Cash Patel pick is crazy. I mean, the cutting off of aid, the cutting off of intelligence support, the cutting off of the support for the children that have been kidnapped, all of the pressure on Zelensky, tariffs being placed. I mean, tariffs being placed on Ukraine, but none on Russia. Zero pressure. It is the worst of the worst than I could have expected, especially since it's very obvious And for anybody who's in the know, the Russians are about to launch another offensive. They're gathering up their troops, they're gathering up their tanks. They're going to launch a major offensives in the spring. And areas like Sumy and Kharkiv are prime targets right now. I did a lot of filming in the area. I know a lot of people in those areas. The bombing's intensifying. The clashes are intensifying. We have the most amount of civilian casualties like in this period in the Kherson human safari. We've seen an increase in civilian casualties since the ceasefires have been signed. So in my mind, we're sleepwalking into a disaster, and this is the worst case scenario where the war drags out and we don't get an end and no support.
Has donated $5.
Yeah,
the idea that you can deport
my absolute frustration with the Trump administration is everyone was telling them, "Hey, you're being naive. Putin is playing. He's just telling you what you want to hear. He's a manipulator. He's a liar. He's going to break the ceasefires." And by the way, I still didn't think Putin was as Machiavellian or evil as he actually is. But Putin has smelled like a little bit of blood in the water. He smelled like a little bit of wavering support in Ukraine. And as a result, he's taking full advantage of the scenario. And he's dealing with the fact that he has sympathetic people in Washington, D.C. who are going to let him seize Eastern Ukrainian
And you can't call it
territory.
anything else but sympathy at this point. You can't call it anything else but sympathy when you hear Steve Witkoff on Tucker Carlson's program talking about the referendums in occupied territory and the Russian speakers and the this and the that. And you're hearing the type of stuff you would expect to hear on Russia Today, not from somebody who's supposed to be representing the United States.
We should audit their financial records the way that they audited Lauren Chen's financial records, because I would not be surprised if half of these people were on the payroll one way or another. And so here's the thing. It's like we have these principles that I was grown up with, right? And this is the reason why I was told I was a Republican growing up for 20 or 30 years. Freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, right to self-defense, limited government, due process of law, anti-corruption. These are all the things that America has done faultingly, like we've done them wrong, but over time, the arc of history bend towards justice, I think, is like an MLK quote, right? And so we've tried to get better with each successive generation. And it feels like with MAGA and with Trump, they don't even know these principles, let alone know that they're betraying them. And so I'm sure there's smarter people up top who are actually just power hungry, fascistic douchebags who are trying to get as much as they can out of the world. But I actually legitimately think that MAGA, like the actual base, they just don't understand the principles that we've been allegedly fighting for 300 years. And so they're willing to sell them instantaneously as long as they have a powerful figure who's telling them that it's the right thing to sell their principles.
I mean, when I hear him saying stuff like suspend the Constitution and make me president again, these are things that if Lincoln's party was Lincoln's party, as it so described itself, should be disqualifying characteristics or statements.
Reagan, this would be repulsive to Reagan. This is repulsive to my Reagan Republican parents. But they kind of can't believe how crazy the party's gotten, and yet they voted for him in 2016. They were part of the problem.
I mean, the deficit spending, this is a deficit president. Trump is a deficit man.
Bro, hold up. I want to point out how crazy pants that is. He had the Department of Government Efficiency gutting foreign aid and gutting federal institutions for the past 60 to 90 days and firing people that they don't even have the full authority to fire. And then what does he do? He has Pete Hegseth, after saying that we were going to cut the budget in half for the military. Less than 40 days later, they're promising a $1 trillion budget for the Department of Defense.
I knew when they said cut that in half, it was bullshit.
What fiscal conservative supports Donald Trump? How could you kid yourself that this was going to be a fiscal conservative president?
He was fighting to raise the debt ceiling before he even got in there.
Dude, the thing that drives me crazy is that I felt like Trump's rhetoric and bluster was such obvious bullshit, especially after the first term, that if you weren't wise to it, you're kind of a moron. And yet we had all these contrarian centrist dickheads who were basically saying oh, Biden's asleep at the wheel. We don't know who's in charge of the presidency. Kamala is just a cackling, prostitute who sold her soul to progressive Democrats and it's like, dude, cool. But do you not remember that we have this incompetent dipshit president who didn't achieve any of his first term policy goals? Can you name me a policy goal that Trump achieved in his first term?
Got rid of the debt in 4 years.
Second. What's that?
He got rid of the debt in 4 years. He promised to do that.
Of course. Yeah, he balanced the books. He built the wall. He secured the border. He ended the fentanyl crisis. He ended the war in Ukraine. Like the dude, it just goes on and on.
The war in Ukraine stuff is so the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Obviously,
this
it was 22. So
people forget he's moved the goalposts on this. I mean, this is going to be the third time in a few days because he said 100 days was the new goalpost. Originally, he said, "I'm going to end the war before I'm even president." No, it wasn't 24 hours. When he had his first debate with Biden and they were debating the war in Ukraine, he said he was going to end it before it was even inaugurated. Because, and this is something Tim Pool said as well when he was talking to Carrie Lake and a bunch of his alternative media heads continued to spin because they said that they had such a good relationship because Trump prioritizes these personal relationships, as talked about in his book Art of the Deal, talked about many of his compatriots all the time. He was going to leverage that in order to end the war. Then, as the campaign, went on, and he said it's going to be over in 24 hours. He said 24 hours a million times over. It became the talking point. 24 hours passes. Of course, it does not end. And now he moved it to 100 days. Well, we're coming up on 100 days. Negotiations still have yet to even start. And civilian casualties are increasing. The Russians have just announced a draft that is the largest in 14 years. This is failing on every level. There's not a level on where this is succeeding except for the gaining of concessions by the Russians in negotiations. And I mean, that's really it. I have yet to see any advancement towards actual peace.
This is the thing. I like, in my opinion, Trump supporters are like, it's like I don't know if you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but it's like a greased watermelon, right? Like in a pool, you try to grab it, it like slips out of your hands as soon as you try to grab it, right? And so this is my thing is I'm just going to say it. I know this dude like hate watches me all the time and he's such a fucking loser. Admiral Gibbs is such a ignorant, dumbass piece of garbage. And this dude is like, yeah, well, if Trump was in office, then Ukraine would have never gotten invaded in the first place. And it's like, number one, you can't prove it. Number two, that's a talking point that the Trump admin repeats. Number three, it doesn't make sense. Number four, how about now, right? We have Russia violating the ceasefire. We have Russia. We already stabbed Ukraine in the back on their behalf. We have Russia mobilizing more troops in order to take advantage of it. And like you said, they're gearing up to take years. They're trying to gear up in order to take more territory in eastern Ukraine. So Trump is the strong, brave, silverback gorilla in the room. Nobody messes with him. He's an intimidating figure. All of the world leaders respect him and all that kind of stuff. Where's Putin's respect for Donald Trump?
I didn't expect.
How come he's not stepping down? How come he's not coming to the peace table right now? He's not. He's ignoring it.
I didn't expect it to be so pathetic to the point where the Trump administration's announced, hey, we announced a civilian ceasefire. And the Russians come out, announce a totally different set of conditions that don't include civilian ceasefire, so it's ceasefire on civilian infrastructure, and then violate the energy infrastructure ceasefire immediately afterwards, like within 2 hours of signing it.
Didn't they drone strike a power plant within 24 hours?
Yeah, they knocked out the power in like half of Odessa within 2 hours. Or it was Odessa, or it was another. Point is, they attacked energy infrastructure immediately. They violated the ceasefires multiple times, and like each time they come back and they negotiate something, they come out and announce it, and then the Russians announce completely separate terms to what Trump announces, and that's what advances whatever the Russians announce. The civilian ceasefire has supposedly been on for like 60 days now or something, 30 to 60 days. And we're seeing the largest strikes on civilian infrastructure in a very long time. I mean, that deadly strike on Kiev and that killed 9 kids. It was hitting like a children's playground. And what's the reaction from that? You want to hear what Trump said? Trump said, I saw that there was bombing. That's bad. I don't know what's going on. Full quote.
Right. Thanks, leader of the free world. Thank you. Yeah. So anyways, I could probably commiserate and bitch for like another 2 hours, but I'll try to make it a little bit more productive and entertaining than that. Well, I don't want to do it the entire time because I'm not sure if that's particularly entertaining. But the point is that, yeah, like you can't hold on to a Trump supporter for more than 10 seconds in order to get for them to admit that their guy is a dumbass, right? Like the entire thing about the tariffs. This is another perfect example of how the Trump admin is totally incompetent and stupid. And I'll have a quote about it in a second. But they tariffed based off of trade deficits, We had the EU in Asian countries and Australia come to us immediately and say, listen, we'll drop our tariffs down to zero. And the Trump admin rejected it because there wasn't a plan to make up for trade deficits. For those of you who don't know the difference between a fiscal deficit and a trade deficit, a fiscal deficit means that you're running into debt in order to run the federal budget. And a trade deficit means that we buy more stuff from foreign countries than they buy from us. It's not a problem. It's literally a trade imbalance.
And the thing is, we don't even calculate it correctly. The thing is, even if
because we don't provide, we don't do services.
Yeah, we don't include that. For example, like if you were to include that for like countries like Sweden or Switzerland, it would completely eliminate the trade deficit entirely because we've transitioned over to a service economy. And one way that this is not like
that was Singapore's argument. Singapore made that exact argument. They said that if you include services, then we are actually in a trade surplus with the United States because we purchase so many electronic services from the United States. And it's like, dude, why are we
and what a lot of people don't realize
allies?
Is when the Europeans, since Trump's last time on engaging in this trade war, they've accumulated their resources, they've organized, and they've made mechanisms to target our trade. They have a mechanism under this understanding that we're a big trader of American services. They're one of the biggest consumers, if not the biggest consumers of American services in the entire world. And while we're trying to focus on the production of goods, we're going to find out the sector that we're completely not focusing on whatsoever, that's actually the big thing that we're trading with Europe, that's a big provider of jobs in the United States, is going to have sanctions fall upon it hard if we don't come to a commemorative understanding with the Europeans.
Yeah, so this was the quote that popped into my head that I saw on Twitter. I don't really care if it's true because it's true enough for me. It's so many people outside of the administration are convinced that Trump is playing 4D chess. Meanwhile, the administration itself is trying to keep Trump from eating the pieces.
It does feel, I mean, I just want to understand because sometimes when you hear Trump talk economic policy, it really does feel like that. Because on one hand, he'll say something like, losing our status as the world reserve currency would be like losing a war. It would be devastating. It would be horrible. He talks about it in doomsday prophecy terms. And then he
accelerates it happening.
The next day, he'll come out and say, we need to weaken the dollar so we can get more strength in our trade position so we can better export goods so other nations like Vietnam will have better PPP comparisons. And so he's trying to do that to build up our production of goods. But these are two interests that don't work. You can't do both at the same time. You cannot both weaken the dollar in order to make us more competitive in the export of goods and then also keep it as the world reserve currency and have it strengthened so we can continue to have, like low interest debt and continue to be able to be the economic powerhouse that we've known based off the world reserve currency. He has these conflicting economic ideas that he wants to do at the same time. That best case scenario will cancel each other out and nothing will happen.
Yeah, so I know Destiny is persona non grata in Twitch and YouTube politics, but he has this thing that he says in a healthy chunk of interviews that I've watched, where he says, listen, in the past 10 years, 12 years of Trump being a relevant political figure, can you find me a single clip of him talking intelligently about geopolitics or economics or world policy or anything like that? I invite anyone to send me that clip and I will review it and I will apologize. And to my knowledge, no one has found that clip and submitted it to him. And so I just find that amazing that we're still pretending that this dude is doing 4D chess when he's not at all. There's also real quick, I just want to share this quote from Bill Barr too. Bill Barr, who was like the former AG for Trump, and was on the outs because he got fired towards the end of the administration. He said that if you like Donald Trump's policies, like if you like securing the border, if you like peace through strength, if you like onshoring domestic manufacturing, if you like all these things, Donald Trump is the last person that you want to implement your policy because he will do it in such a way that it is counterproductive to the actual policy, and the blowback will destroy not only whatever you've created, you will actually fall behind on whatever you were trying to achieve. That's a Bill Barr quote. That's somebody who worked with him day in and day out for years.
We're seeing that right now on the deficit. We're seeing that right now when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine. I think we're honestly, and I mean this sincerely, I think we're further away from ending the war today than we were on January 19th.
6 months ago. Yeah.
I think we're further away from ending the war now.
I think that if there was a position of strength in Ukraine from the Harris administration, and they had said like, nope, we're going to keep the financial doors open, we're going to keep the technology doors open, we're going to keep the intel running, we're going to keep this, we're going to keep that, then what would have happened is possibly, now I'm saying possibly, of course, but you would have seen an exhausted Russia just be like, okay, this isn't ending anytime soon, and we have another 4 years of hard fighting. We might as well see what we can get now. And then they would try to negotiate the new borders, and then maybe do like an actual ceasefire versus like what we're talking about right now, where they're ramping up.
Look, I wasn't particularly excited about a Harris administration when it came to foreign policy. I don't see her as particularly skilled on the issue or experienced in the field. I knew that there were people, but there were going to be people that would advise her that I knew had at least experience and knowledge in the idea of how to retain leverage, right? And as long as you understood how to retain leverage, as long as you had gone to some basic educational learning and how to be a diplomat, then you should be able to back up Harris. And you wouldn't say be texting off of Signal while negotiating with the Russians. And, you know, there's a million different kerfluffles we've already had diplomatically. Maybe you wouldn't have your staff getting in drunken brawls with Brussels police. That's a thing that happened to Marco Rubio's staff.
I wouldn't be excited about a Harris administration, but let's face it, I wasn't excited about a Biden administration either back in 20. And my wife said this to me, and I thought it was kind of brilliant. She was like, you know, he's so old, he's just going to go sleep on the couch. I can't believe that. And I'm like, good. I want like a lame duck status quo Democrat who doesn't do a whole bunch, but keeps their hand on the wheel and makes sure that the world doesn't fall into the pit of hell. And honestly, like a lame duck Democrat would be infinitely preferable to what's going on.
A lame duck Democrat. I mean, it's preferable to what's going on right now, but it also just kicks the can down. It just moves the crisis down another 4 years until somebody picks up.
But who has the charisma? I've said this before, and I
whether
still
or not,
this.
Okay, whether or not
who has the charisma to carry Trump's torch? I don't think there's another person, including Vance.
The problem is we're all thinking about another Trump. Right? We're all thinking about who's the next Donald Trump. There's not going to be another Donald Trump. Donald Trump's Donald Trump. Okay, sure. It's certainly not his kids. Okay, they cannot exude any charisma. I think Barron Trump, once we actually hear him say his first word, he's going to be a squeaker, and it's over. It's over in an instant or something. You never know. But I think it's going to be instant. It's done. Right? Point is, though, I don't think that outside of maybe some congressional offices, maybe some governorships in red states, I don't think these are political masterminds that are going to take over the country. But if you are somebody who stretches the system in the same way Trump does and have other skills to get you in the same position Trump is, for example, let's say instead of being a loudmouth who comes in and smashes up the establishment and tries to do the shotgun approach, let's say you're a much more clean-cut, well-organized, somebody who's more of a political assassin, somebody who can go in there and use special interest groups, use intimidation tactics to try to achieve many of the same authoritarian objectives, but through a much more calm, simple-mannered, reserved way that is of a different style. My point is, like, if you had somebody that had the same inclinations as Donald Trump, but was, say, someone who had the political skills of, say, a Lyndon Baines Johnson, that would scare me in some ways more than Donald Trump. And so I do think there has to be a political reshuffling in the country, some advancement, definitely for what the Democrats are offering, if we're going to make it so that type of authoritarian, like populist, hey, we're going to just fix everything with our magic plan is no longer of tempting to the American populace.
No, I said this. I probably said this 5 years ago. I said Donald Trump doesn't scare me. I said the thing that comes after Donald Trump scares me. And specifically, I think I was probably referencing Vance without even knowing that he existed at the time. And I do think that JD Vance can be more intelligent. I do think he can be a political assassin, but the truth is that sometimes he's a little autistic and sometimes he spouts off some random dissident right-wing talking point. And so as a result of that, I don't know if he has the charisma to carry MAGA. Now, he might get if the economy recovers by the end of Trump's term, if geopolitics stabilize by the end of Trump's term, then Trump is going to claim victory. And as a result, Vance will be able to step into his shadow and take a run for it. Now, whether or not he has the charisma to actually carry it through, I have no idea. I'm actually hoping that this year is so brutal that it stays in the minds of Americans over the course of the next 4 years, and Trump gets bloodied in the midterms, and he gets blood, and his successor gets bloodied after he falls. Because realistically, I don't think that we can take this much. I don't think the Republic can take this much pressure for a decade. I don't think it can. I think we can withstand a second Trump presidency. I don't know if we can withstand like 8 years of Vance with similar levels of abuse of the legal system.
No, I mean, I don't know if I want this year to be particularly brutal. Also, there is a philosophy of, if you're going to rip the band-aid off of all these unpopular decisions, do it now when you're the furthest away from the midterms. And so when it comes closer, you can do other things, say giveaways, handouts is how some people would call it, as we're starting to see them respond to the market downturn with, hey, maybe we got to give a special package to farmers, special package to this group. We see something similar with Viktor Orban when election season comes around. It's a typical tactic. So my point is, like, I understand what you're saying about it being a brutal year. I don't want it to be too brutal. Vance, I don't know how much Vance scares me, because I don't think it is true that I think he has the same authoritarian inclinations, but he also is very inexperienced. This is somebody who just made his way outside of venture capital, who has his position based upon Trump. And so we haven't seen him survive without Trump. He got a Senate position due to a Trump endorsement.
I want to tell you the narrative. I want to tell you the narrative about Vance that I heard in DC. And obviously this is all scuttlebutt. This is all water cooler talk. So I want you to take it with a grain of salt. However, what I was told in Washington, D.C. is that Curtis Yarvin, the Mencius Medbug or whatever, he is the philosophical backbone of like Peter Thiel and a bunch of distant right-wing fascist freaks in San Francisco. And these distant right-wing fascist freaks wanted a way to get into political power, and they realized that progressives had effectively hamstrung them for a decade, so they got sick of being progressive. And so they ended up getting into this dissident right-wing esoteric philosophy. And so they were looking for a Trojan horse into MAGA in order to get power. And the reason why J.D. Vance came out of almost nowhere in order to be the VP was because he was the San Francisco venture capital tech bro that would help them get into MAGA. And then MAGA would deregulate on their behalf in order to make sure that they could do whatever they want on the back door while everyone's distracted with, let's say, Ukraine or capsizing the international market. And so what's funny is these things are happening. We're arguing about them. They are important. But also I'm wondering what kind of like tech deregulation is going on in the background that these San Francisco elite, douchebags are getting from MAGA right now.
I think there's going to be a ton of deregulation. I think there's going to be deregulation across.
To what end, though? Like, do they just want AI, or do they want to make like human animal hybrids? Do they want to, what do they want to do? War robots?
It could be any number of things.
Want?
It could be like a decrease in taxes. It could be having institutional power so you can get government contracts much more easily, as we're starting to see with certain companies being favored. It could be any number of things. It could be just having the ear of one of the most powerful people in the world, just to have it for the next 4 years, is an asset. But that's what I'm saying.
You shouldn't underestimate Vance, because that's what I'm saying is there are people who backed Vance into MAGA, and then there are people who want to see him succeed in the future.
I'm sure there'll be people who want to see him succeed in the future. There's people who wanted to see, Ron DeSantis be the nominee in 2020.
Me
2024.
Too. Autist Ron.
And
Ron would have been so much better than this.
He crashed so hard. He did not connect with the general public. He needed to
embrace his autism. He needed to embrace the Homelander memes when people are like, he smiles.
Is there a right winger you don't think is autistic?
And like all that kind of stuff. He should have been making Homelander memes while it was hot. He should have embraced his autism and his inner nerd. He should have been talking about policy even more. And he should have been like, listen, Trump, he should have been like, Trump's retarded. Like, he should have been, Trump's retarded. Here's all the policy stuff that I want to talk about. I know I'm awkward. I know I'm weird, but this is what I sincerely believe. Maybe I don't have my finger on the pulse, but I think
when Vance won in Ohio,
earnestness would have been better than what he
won in a pretty red area against Tim Ryan. When he got elected, it was with Trump's endorsement. When he became VP, it was because Trump fucking chose him. It wasn't because he like politically maneuvered and had so much political capital that Trump needed him specific. No, it was because Trump chose him.
You talking about Vance?
Yeah, I'm talking about Vance.
Dude, so hold on. I would see, you know, I'm conspiratorial minded, so
Can I finish
bear that
my
in mind as this
point?
goes.
I've been trying to get to my point 3 times.
Absolutely.
My point is that it's one thing to maneuver in MAGA land and maneuver around the esoteric, if we're saying that these are the philosophic underpinnings. I don't know for sure. We don't know, but say it is. It's one thing to maneuver there. It's a whole other thing to maneuver in the general media space when you're the focus and you're the attention, right? When Vance
Sure.
is put under, you know, the national screen, is he going to do well, or is that Magic the Gathering loving, a bitter, bitter man who
Emo.
flip flop? Is it going to come out? Is it not going to connect with voters? And he's going to have to answer for a bunch of Trump's bullshit. But when it doesn't come out of Trump's mouth, it sounds a lot more like bullshit. Remember what happened to Carrie Lake?
Yeah. Yeah. No, okay. I'm with you there. The thing though is I would see the thing that I was trying to criticize
just like how
though.
Harris had to answer for Biden's record, he's gonna have to do the same
Mhm.
for Trump. And when Trump answers for it, he says terrific, great, fantastic, wonderful. Vance can't do the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, he'll be like, "Yeah, it was rough, but blah 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 blah." And if you're explaining, you're losing. I get that. But I wanted to point this out though. You're saying that you don't see as much of a connection for people backing Vance in order to get him into the Trump admin. I would say that all the rug pull, crypto bro, reserve, meme coin, Bitcoin, Ethereum bullshit was 100% like tech in San Francisco buying its way into MAGA via JD Vance.
Oh,
100%.
I don't know if
There's
it's
no
by
way.
JD Vance. This is the thing. I don't know how much of the Curtis Yaravan, like, because I think sometimes we kind of fall. It's not that I don't think he didn't have any influence on JD Vance. It's just like I could imagine myself running for office in 20, 30 years, right? And then out of nowhere, someone's like, Vosh, the controversial political theorist who shaped Dylan's mind into what Dylan, do you want to nuke Israel? I was like, wait. You know, I could see just this,
I'm going to
like,
write that essay actually.
but do you get what I'm saying? Is like I don't want to put too much weight into it because I think that they're one of his backers. I think there's a bunch of his backers, a bunch of people. It's so I just don't want to like make it like the reason he's there is that he's just the buy-in.
Sure. You don't, all right. You don't want to overemphasize it. I get it. That's fine. My concern though, the reason why I brought that up in the first place though, is because I think that a lot of people are trying to groom him to be Trump's successor. And then I do think that there are powerful people that are going to back him. I know you're saying that's always true. Of course it's always true. But I'm just saying that these might be particularly nefarious shitbags. That's basically what I'm saying. The alliance between tech bro, Silicon Valley, fascist, dissident right wing psychos, and then Christian nationalism is actually like a weirdly, I don't know why it's effective, but it's like a weirdly odd, nefarious alliance.
The gutting of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau unconstitutionally was, I think, probably one of their biggest achievements, honestly.
Was the CFPB established by Congress?
Sorry, say that again. I got this ringing in my
Was that
ears.
bureau established by Congress?
Yes, it was established by Congress. It was established by Congress.
And
they returned over 20
it.
Yeah, they still got it. There's a bunch of, I mean, USAID was also established by Congress, I believe. There's a lot of these institutions that are established by Congress that is getting gutted. And they got these people fired. And what they did, they got $20 billion back to 200 million Americans. But their job is to basically be if you scam people, they're supposed to come in and put that in check. If this anti-scam police isn't there, then what's going to happen when Tesla or X or one of these companies engage in we're doing a 5% rate increase because we're added to do something, new safety feature we have to do. It's bullshit. They just want to do a $5 increase. Their job is to go in there and check it. If there's nobody to go in there and check it, it's not going to get checked. And so I see this type of deregulatory action already being done through people like Elon. And so I just don't know how integral Vance is really as this like crowned. I mean, I know Elon can't be president, so I guess like that would get them even further into the office where Elon could lose Trump's favor. I mean, it's not like he would be the first.
Well, the reason why I think they would want to back Vance would be because he is younger. I think he's in his 40s, so that's very young in politics. And then if they actually kind of continued the legacy of MAGA, they could keep pushing the pendulum in their direction for another, term or 2 terms. And so that's what I would see it as, is it would just be convenient and he's the right age. I can't think of another MAGA politician under the age of like 50 besides Ron DeSantis, who is autistic. I can't think of another politician who could carry the mantle for MAGA. And MAGA is going to be politically
You
relevant
don't think
with or
Lauren
without a leader.
Boebert is gonna bring us into the glory age?
I really don't. I really don't. I think Republicans subconsciously hate women more than they like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
What was her name? What was that woman who ran in 20? Carly Fiorina. She's gonna come back 2028. Carly
Right.
Fiorina. It's gonna be the big
Yeah.
W. Okay, so
I'm so done with the schizophrenia of the Republican Party. It's very frustrating.
man, what else is there to talk about with you? I think there was a few other things.
Well, yeah. Can I share? The wife might get home from karate in a second, so I just can I share my recent alternative media exploits?
Sure, if you want to. I know you went on Tim Pool's program. That was one thing I wanted to touch on you with and ask you what it was like behind the scenes, etc.
Oh, it was dope. I actually have pretty funny things to say about that. So, so I went on this DC trip. I talked to some big heads in DC, not any Congress members, but other people. Valor Media Network. That's something you should type into your YouTube search bar. It's effectively an offshoot of Midas Touch. Midas Touch is a wildly successful liberal program that has a bunch of young creators who make a lot of content that's pretty popular. Valor is more oriented towards like first responders, veterans, law enforcement, all that kind of stuff. And they're trying to create a media space that is positive for young men. And so I talked to one of the bosses there named Ken. He allowed me to go full time for them. So now I'm streaming 25 hours a week for myself, but also for them. And so basically, if you want to see me give lukewarm, I'm kidding. There is spicy content, but if you want to see me give moderate, never Trump Republican takes on how our insane world is falling apart, then go check out Valor Media Network and my YouTube channel, Counterpoints, which I still have a political counterpoints channel. Then with the Tim Pool show, because I'm assuming that's more interesting. With the Tim Pool show, our dear friend Prime Kai, believe it or not, that was my connection into Tim Pool. He was invited on because they were trying to find political creators for the culture war. And so as a result, they brought on Admiral Gibbs and Prime Kai to debate on their show. And then Prime was like, hey, I talked to all sorts of schizophrenic political debaters. Do you want me to help get people on? And then he recommended me to the show as well. Their booker is very nice. I think her name is Lisa. She's great. And then all of the things that you heard about the Tim Pool compound are absolutely correct. We drove into, it's around Harper's Ferry. It's like 30 minutes like northwest or west or something like that. You just pull up to like a 2-story house and it looks like a
Is it in
house.
West Virginia or still in Maryland?
West Virginia.
Gotcha.
And then, by the way, are you in Maryland or are you in Ukraine right now?
I'm in Maryland right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you could be there in 20 minutes. So,
I don't think
probably
they'll
an
ever
hour
invite me
realistically.
on, honestly.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I've been very critical of Tim on Twitter, and it didn't seem to matter at all. So, whatever. I don't think he necessarily knows what I am because he's so busy.
I'll let you finish your story, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. So, Tim show, who is it? Fabian Liberty is there, an hour early. I show up 15 minutes early after staying in a hotel for the night before. Tim shows up, and Tim's actually he's really nice. Like he's a nice guy. He talks cordially. We start talking about political stuff even before the show starts. But we're at a bar. We're in basically there's a 2-story house. There's another 2-story house on the property, and then there's like a warehouse. And the warehouse has been converted into a skate park, and so the entire Bay Area is a skate park. Downstairs they have snacks, and then towards the back end they have a second story. The second story has a bar, a Japanese toilet, and then it has the studio, and the studio is very nice. So we're hanging out at the bar, we're yapping. Tim shows up, and then I swear to God, super nice. We're having a good conversation, whatever. But Tim, he's not really looking us in the eye. Like it seems like there's a little bit of a social anxiety going there, if I'm being honest. And then he also busts out a fingerboard and a rail, and he just starts fingerboarding the entire time that we're having a conversation. So for like 20 minutes, Tim Pool is just like, yeah, that is interesting. Here's my take on the political thing. But the entire time he's talking, he's doing like grinds and kick flips with his fingerboards, which, I think you could actually see me in the podcast. I'm like playing with stuff on the table, like a pen and a scrap paper. One of the things I play with is a fingerboard because he just loves that shit. We do the show. It's great. It's fun. I would love to go back. I would love to fight again. It would be fantastic. Audience hates me, because obviously I'm telling them things that they hate. But I think I'm a good villain for the Tim Pool show. We get done, and he's like, "Yeah, you guys want to have lunch? We got pizza downstairs." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's socialize." And then one of Tim's employees immediately starts blasting techno music, and Tim immediately starts ignoring everybody and skateboarding. So I just think the homie, he was really nice. He was a great host. He fed me. He gave me a great platform. I'm not talking too much shit, but I do think he has a little bit of social anxiety, and I think he copes with that social anxiety by doing fingerboarding and skateboarding.
He's big in the boards.
He's big on the boards, man. He loves those boards. He loves it.
Man,
end of story.
End of story. So you were asking about like me going on. Look, it's not that I wouldn't go on if I was invited, or of course I would. I'm a small creator. It's a big show, and it's not like I'm gonna bring over a ton of their audience into what I'm doing. But I mean, just the attention from it is good. From your name being bumped up in the search algorithm, of course. And I like to talk on big platforms about issues I care about. I just don't think that's the place to do it, or a place where those people are welcome. For example, and I'm saying this as just, we're being unfiltered, I'm just being honest. We're having Wick and Lactoid this Friday debating Ukraine. Why is that a good idea?
Yeah, they're Twitch and YouTube political, figures, and they're just going there to yap in order to give Tim content.
Yeah, and look, I like Wick. I think Lactoid is kind of, smarmy sometimes in debates and kind of slimy, but I don't think he's like a bad guy. I think that they could have interesting political conversations, but these are not experts that have been brought on, or people who at least specialize in this arena, so people can learn the most about it. It's two people with contradicting viewpoints who have probably about the same surface level knowledge that Tim has, generally speaking. I honestly don't know enough about Wix. He says he's doing a lot of research this week. I wish him nothing but the best of luck. And so for me, I just don't expect Tim Pool to be like, I want to debate trade. Let me bring on Peter Zeihan, even if it's him and 3 of his buddies 4v1. I just don't think he's going to do that, because those are, number one, not necessarily the most entertaining guests, and number two, it's a lot harder. It's high risk, low reward. These are people that are not going to be as well known when it comes to the experts to bring the actual knowledge, and so you're going to rely on, if you're going to bring on a no name, somebody that'll give you what you want, or you want somebody that's big enough that they can bring some power. I don't think the purpose of this is to bring on people who are informed.
Dylan, this is the thing. So I had this complaint back when, and what's funny is I think you probably had the complaint subconsciously. I had a complaint with Twitch and YouTube politics, where,
and by the way, I'm not saying this. Let me say the one last thing, because I know I might sound a little whiny right now. I understand. Look, I did hippy dippy. I'm not saying that only the experts can debate stuff, but I'm saying this as somebody who really cares about this one issue, and I'm thinking about, are we gonna learn anything here? Are the viewers gonna learn anything here? And I find that highly doubtful, and I don't think this is the environment for it.
No, I agree with you, but I think that was one of the things about Twitch and YouTube politics very early on that I had some frustration over, was the wrestling. The wrestling aesthetic of Twitch and YouTube politics was just like, you have these crazy personalities on, they yell and they scream at each other, they fight, and then nobody changes their minds by the end of it. However, and then there are people who bring good information, and there's obviously a lot of people who are either liars, or they're incompetent, or they're ignorant, and then they kind of muddy the waters around the topics, and so it actually makes discourse worse, not better. However, I think that this is the democratization of media. And what I mean by that is, through cell phones, through the internet, through all that kind of stuff, everyone has a voice, but the problem with everyone having a voice is everyone has a voice. So the biggest morons, as long as they have the web camera and the ability to form sentences, they can share their opinions on incredibly important topics. I don't that's a bad thing, but it's reality. And so if you want to have any kind of relevance in Twitch and YouTube politics or alternative media politics, I think you just need to embrace the fact that many of the most popular people in the field are morons. You just have to embrace it.
Well, I'm not I'm not calling all these people morons, but what I am saying about in this case is Tim Pool.
Benny Johnson is a fucking moron.
When I saw Tim Pool, it was him and it was 4 other of his guys. I think it was Phil on there, and there's a few others. 4 of them righties, one of them lefties, right? I think it was one of the 20-year-old twinks that have been coming up. I forget their names, honestly.
Luke Beasley. I almost guarantee it was Luke.
I think it was Luke. Yeah, it was that one. And Luke's very reserved. He's performing very well. He's doing what he should do in the situation. But I'm watching like a 4v1. And the 4v1 person they're going against is a 20-year-old. And I'm not trying to say that if you're young, you can't be smart. I started this when I was 18. But I'm just imagining if that's the environment they need to set up for that one guy, you think they're going to bring on Timothy Snyder? Ever?
I have no idea. I don't know. But the point is, you would be, in my opinion, you would be better off for throwing your elbows on a big platform, regardless of whether or not it was productive. Because, like you said,
I'm not even. Again, I do it. I'm saying that's why I don't think I'll ever be invited.
Well, I'll text Lisa. How about that?
If you want to, that's fine. I'll go. I certainly would like to push my documentary.
His name's Dylan Burns. He's a geopolitical expert. He's been on the ground in Ukraine before. You had this debate between a bunch of Twitch and YouTube political nobodies, and realistically, I think Dylan he would destroy them all. Okay, so
look, it doesn't need to be me.
This is
not even a call for me to go on. I think Anastasia could probably perform pretty well there. I think, again, I said Timothy Snyder. That's a bigger name that would probably be even better for getting the Ukrainian or at least their position represented than what I would do. And if they want me, they want me. It's just my point is I don't think anybody like that is going to be welcome on that platform.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Nobody, and I say this, and I think you already know this, nobody is going to want to sit there and you could be totally correct. And by the way, you and I are probably in lockstep when it comes to Ukraine. You might be a little bit too involved compared to me, but that I'm still heavily involved and get very emotional about it. Nobody wants to sit there for 90 minutes to 2 hours because this is entertainment. At the end of the day, it is entertainment to them. It's not real. It's not civilians dying. It's not blood and guts warfare. It's not real human beings, dying in the trenches and getting slaughtered, fighting for their country.
Here's a question. Do you think Tim cares?
No. Well, he cares insofar as it affects American politics. I don't think that if you showed him a picture of dead Ukrainian kids that he's going to break down sobbing. Or if you showed him a picture of showed him endless stories of 19-year-old Ukrainian soldiers getting drone strike to death in the trenches.
When I hear him,
no, I don't think he cares.
It's so performative. It's so over the top. Ukraine's the greatest enemy of the fucking. Who gives a fuck, right? You're talking about that was retarded. Ukraine is the devil itself.
That was one of the most dumb sentences I ever heard uttered in politics. He's so
dramatic. He's so over the top. It's impossible for me to see it as anything than somebody putting on clown makeup and putting on a show.
But hold on, I'll tell you, because that's what I was ready for. Because obviously I always catch Tim's most hyperbolic clips. But what I found in the conversation, because we were talking about whether or not the welfare state has effectively destroyed modern women and modern society, which, let's face it, if you're pro-welfare, that's going to be a slightly left-leaning topic. And if you're anti-welfare, then that's going to be more libertarian. Tim's audience is obviously more libertarian. But what I found in the conversation was Tim was engaging with the topic. He was engaging with what was being said, what I was saying, and what Fabian was saying. He was entertaining kind of devil's advocate hypotheticals, and he was digging into what the actual topic matter was, and he wasn't doing talking points. What I was ready for a hyperbolic talking points machine to do a 2 versus 1 debate against me on the topic, just because it would look great for him to dunk on somebody that he disagrees with on his audience. That's not what I got. I actually got somebody who was playing with the thoughts in his mind. So I think that you're right.
Is that clip. Is that what you got because that's what he is, or is that because you got because that was the day in the conversation?
No idea. Can't tell you. I would have to spend more time with the man, right? So that's where I would say, like, it wasn't enough for me to be like, oh yeah, Tim's a great guy now. Like, I didn't change all of my positions on Tim, but I was pleasantly surprised that he was willing to actually entertain devil's advocate hypotheticals. And also he was pressing Fabian on like some, stereotypical libertarian positions. And I thought that was really funny because one of the things that he kind of pressed Fabian on, he was like, oh, you don't believe in the welfare state. You don't believe in taxes. You think taxes are extortion or theft. You think that the federal government shouldn't exist, et cetera, et cetera. Why should anyone take you seriously when realistically at any time you could leave this society and go someplace else? And I understand that that's kind of like a stereotypical question to ask a libertarian that they are prepared for, but he was pressing them on it and it was funny. So, that wasn't expected. I thought that was refreshing.
It's refreshing for him to ask an ANCAP, like, why don't you just leave society?
Yeah. And then press him on it. 100%.
Did you expect him just to say, well, ANCAP is actually intelligent and we're all ANCAP? How low is this?
Well,
how low is this bar?
Well, yeah, dude, the bar's incredibly low. You should go check out the comments. The comments are like, Carter's such a dumbass. Meanwhile, they like never say why I'm dumb. They never say what they disagree with. The only thing that they say is, why should I have to pay for condoms in East Africa? Why is a kid dying from AIDS in East Africa my problem? That's like the level of political analysis that chat was ready to engage in.
I mean, and this is the problem.
Yes, I feel morons. This is democracy. Yeah, the democracy. Demos. The people are dumb. Yes, welcome to a free society, Dylan.
I'm well aware that there's a problem with political education. There's a problem with education generally.
Is it education or are people just dumb?
Chat, if you have any questions, I don't want to keep Connor for too long because he's got stuff to do, I'm sure. So I wanted to say this is the time to throw your questions at him. I want to keep him just for a few more minutes.
Yeah, please do, just because I'm sure the family's going to be walking in the door anytime. I'm sorry for yesterday. Like I said, the struts that were holding the control arm in my front left tire were broken, and so the car was like sagging, like over it. But we had the warranty, so we were able to get it taken care of. And then today, my older son had karate, and so I told the wife, Dylan's more important. I'm sorry. I gotta stay home during
then
karate
the
practice.
Ancient art of karate.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So no, if Chad has any questions, then hit me with them because I probably got to dip because they're walking through the door right now. Actually.
Do you think Trump is even a conservative?
No. He could never articulate a fiscal conservative perspective. He could never articulate a social conservative perspective. He could never articulate Burkean conservatism. He could never articulate neoconservatism. He doesn't even know what these ideas are.
That's true. I think that's just about everything. I don't let me just check YouTube because I haven't checked them for any questions.
Okay. And then do you mind if I just shout myself out because I'm probably gonna have to run?
Yeah, no worries. Then we'll peace out.
Okay, cool. Then for those of you who are seeing me for the very first time, Dylan and I go pretty far back. I would say like 2020, probably. What ended up happening was I debated Mike from PA in like fall of 2019, spring of 2020, somewhere in there. And then Dylan was like, hey, do you want to come on the show? Yeah. And then fuck you. So Dylan was like, hey, do you want to come on the Hippy Dippy? I was like, I have no idea what that is. And then he was like, hey, do you want to come anyways? And I was like, yeah. And then I met Prime, and then I got into the debate scene and I fell in love. And Dylan and I, worked together for a prolonged period. He left for Ukraine in 22, effectively taking the Twitch and YouTube political scene with him. I'm not going to lie. It became pretty stagnant.
It wasn't all me. I think you're sometimes a little dramatic when I hear this.
It was substantively you. Anyways, but the point is that I continued pushing with Warhammer content. I continued pushing with political content. My Warhammer channel did very well. My political channel is very middling statistics. However, what ended up happening was I did get hired by Valor Media Network within the past month or so. And so I'm streaming 25 hours a week, and then I'm doing like 20 hours of back-end work as well. So if you are interested in a moderate right-wing perspective talking about geopolitical events, I am live noon to 5. If you type in Valor Media into your search bar, you'll find a relatively new channel with a white and black microphone logo. You'll find me there. And then you can also just type in Counterpoints or Counterpoints 40K, and you'll find those two channels as well. And you can subscribe and watch my content and hopefully enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Oh, can I ask you one piece of question? One
Sure.
extra question off the topic. How do you have ringing in your ears?
Yes.
How do you deal with it?
So I only have it about once a week, and it only lasts for normally like 30 minutes. All the people that I know, it's called tinnitus. All the people that I know who suffer from tinnitus, they basically just have white noise at all times. So they have box fans in every single room that they're in. They play white noise on their phones. They do all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, it kind of is what it is. So I know it's probably slowly driving you crazy. But that's actually, I don't know if you remember this, but like right when you went to the Ukrainian war, I was like, listen, man, you're going to have ghosts, you're going to have injuries, you're going to fall in love with it, but it's going to punish you. And tinnitus is one of those punishments for sure.
Well, it's really good that I like this one specific tone. I'm just in love with it.
Yeah. You hear it all the time.
My favorite note.
Just pretend it's music. That's the best I got for you.
Okay, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. I always love catching up with you. I sincerely wish you well. Parasocial love to chat, real love to Dylan. No homo, but I genuinely appreciate you, and I hope you have a beautiful night.
Yeah, thank you. Slightly homo. You have a nice day.
All right. Bye, buddy.
Okay. Where were we?